Shalom, guys. Just sitting here reflecting a little bit on the last several days and even a couple weeks, and what the predominant message or understanding's been for me, and what Father's been showing me, and just leading me through, like, one step at a time to this awareness and this understanding, this picture of the insufficientness of a brother's heart for his brother, and how even if we look at a picture of a man and a woman and together they produce two different fruits, that those fruits, while they were directly connected to the mother and the father, or they were a direct source of the mother and the father, they don't have necessarily that direct link to one another. So they're of the same thing, but they're each their own reflection of it, and that in this world can lead to a cooperative or a competitive environment between those two brothers. And I believe that the nature of this world is a competitive nature, or a fallen nature, between those two brothers. And this is ultimately the heart of the story of the three patriarchs, which lead into the heart of the story of Israel, which is 10 brothers that betray one brother, and then one brother who has two names that was not there at the time of the betrayal, and who also has the same direct mother source, which is again another connection that they share with one another that makes that relationship significant in some capacity, or differentiated, unique, special in some way. So then we look at the fact that if we take 1 divided by 11, it's 0.090909, which is less than 1%. So men, that tells us if we're in our Father's house, so to speak, what can we expect from our brothers? If you're Joseph, it's going to be especially difficult. You're going to be the minority. You're going to be the point. You're barely 1% of the brotherhood. Then there's Benjamin, the younger brother, that's more innocent and naive, coming along, but is open, is teachable spirit. That's like 17%. The 2 out of the 12, 2 divided by 12. But when you take 10 and you divide that by 12, look at the difference in the percentage of men who are going to be willing to betray you, betray your father, take the proceeds from that betrayal and use it for something like sandals, and then never really do anything to make it right. They're not willing to make it right. They're not willing to go look. They're not willing to go leave their sacrifice and go back to their brother and make peace, and then go take their sacrifice back. Well, what's that picture of? That would have been a picture of a brother saying, hey, Dad, I got to go make something right. Go out, look for Joseph, come back with Joseph and bring him to your father and say, here's your son, he's alive. And those other brothers would have had stand and face the truth and the reality, and their death oath would have been null and void, because they would have all been accountable. But if it had happened that way, I don't know, man. They might have all gotten murdered. Who knows? They all might have gotten death penalty. How could their father have responded? I mean, the way that this unfolded was so delicate. And imagine that while Joseph was gone, literally all that time that Yaakov had with those sons that were just complete betrayers of him, and how could they really even look at him in the face? I mean, that's just their whole lives were a lie. Their whole lives were a lie. And so what the Father's been showing me is how is it that Joseph was able to recognize his brothers? How was it that Joseph still had such love for his brothers after all this time, after no one coming to look for him, and that he had to remove himself and weep and wept for these men who had betrayed him so bitterly, and so vengefully, and what? Out of jealousy. And there's all kinds of reasons for jealousy. We can see there were two women who were natural wives, so to speak, of Yaakov or Jacob. And of those two, one was legitimate and one was through betrayal or illegitimate. And then we see that he had handwives that would have been the servants that came with his wives, the handmaids, so to speak, likely of different culture, different origin of tongue and skin color, possibly not necessarily, but likely. And so these boys are going to look different. They're going to have a class structure within their family system, and they're going to be resentful of that, just like we saw with Ishmael and Isaac, and then ultimately Abraham separating his sons of his third wife from the kingdoms of Ishmael and Isaac, Ishmael and Isaac. So for Joseph to be able to love his brothers in a proper context, in a context that was beyond how they treated him as a brother, he needed to love them through Father's heart. And Father's heart is what I've been really coming. It's a phrase. It's an idea. It's a concept that we literally look up through our Father's eyes back at our brother, and love our brother through our Father's perspective of him, not our own. Otherwise, we are not going to be able to love that man the way he needs to be loved. Same as a woman is not going to be able to love her man if she doesn't love him and look at him as an imperfect creature that is seeking righteousness. But the point is that all the tribes have sinned against. We're all guilty in some form. And we're working through that. We're going through the refinement to deal with those things, to address those different various guilts, to make adjustments in both our outer living experiences, our sensual life, as well as our inner life, our inner kingdom. And this is what it's about. You have to really be able to fully recognize the Father's love, to be able to receive it, and then to receive it and then give it to your brother. So you got to love your father to love your brother. But if you don't love your brother, the reality is that you haven't learned how to love your father either, because it is that Father's love that you then give to your brother. So it's like a simultaneous thing. It's a process, but if you want the perfection of the Spirit of truth, the recognition is that what you do to your brother, you do to your father. What you do to your father, you also do to your brother, because they're one. And the picture of one in Hebrew, echad, is literally eich, brother, and daleth, doorway. Doorway meaning what separates or divides, but also joins one space and another, which could, and so it's a passageway, but it's showing us this word brother right there in the word union. So I think you need a brother to be in union, as in this world, out in a one-dimensional or flat level with our brother. That's the kind of union you have in the physical sense, but in the spiritual sense, our union is with our Father, and ultimately our facilitator of that, and our example of how to access that is through our Messiah and through his example as our older brother, and then we become Benjamin to him, and he becomes Joseph to us, and we don't betray him, because we recognize, we hear his voice, and then we realize who he is, and that he's our older brother, that he loved us, what he went to, the extremes that he went to go and find us and redeem us, that he had to do something that was so extreme that it would echo throughout all history, that people would know throughout all history what this one man did for his brother, with a capital B. So, if you want to love your father, love your brother. That's going to be what pleases your Father, because when you love your brother, it's like a dad seeing his two siblings get along. What good is an inheritance if you got two sons that are squabbling and bickering and fighting and devastating each other, raping each other's women, killing each other's children, poisoning and polluting their inheritance, each other? Man, can you imagine the heartache of that father? Can you imagine the heartache of that father? I have tasted it, but I can't fully imagine what his heartache must be, to see the full extent of things that I can't see, the depths of some of the evil and darkness that is pervasive here in his creation. So, Father, I just thank you for this time, and I pray that you would deliver us from the limitations of a brother's heart, Father, and grant us a father's heart in love for one another, and in perspective, and in grace for one another, and long suffering for one another, and mercy and patience, Father. I just thank you and praise you for your patience with us, that you're long suffering, that you're gentle, that you're kind, that you care for even the smallest bird of the field. This is how amazing and gracious you are, how wonderful you are. I thank you for giving us the spirit of truth and conviction to cause us conviction, Father, in our hearts to honor and to seek and to seek your righteousness, and to turn away from what you have called death, what you've called lawlessness or sin, Father. I thank you for your word. I thank you for your spirit. I thank you for your Son. I thank you for your people. I thank you for your creation. I thank you for that you're Almighty One, the Almighty One, Father, and that there is no injustice in you, and that the four pillars of your creation, love, truth, justice, and righteousness, Father, those are what you embody. Those are what you are. Those are your four corners, Father. So I thank you and I praise your name this day, and I pray that you would bring more brothers who love one another with a father's heart out as shepherds, as leaders, as example of your spirit, Father, which is greater than greater than, but also equal to the word, greater than that it was this word that came forth from the Spirit. And so therefore the word is called the Son of the Spirit. We thank you, Father, and we praise you for your Son. In his name I offer this and ask you to receive, sanctify, bless, and establish it before you, Father, and make it pleasing before you. In your Son's name I pray. Amen.